So we're going to have the last session looking to the future, a little bit about some of the things that are happening in the wellbeing and performance space. And I'm delighted that we've got a fantastic lineup of experts here this afternoon. Some of you might have been expecting Toby Horry from TUI, but he has COVID. So thankfully, the lovely Tom Bird, who was our Oracle client, but is now at SAP.
Yep.
He yesterday said that he would stand in because we've worked with Tom before, so we're going to talking to you, so thank you very much for that. Michelle Griffith Robinson, it's so lovely to have you here. We met actually for a WW session last year. I just thought you were so inspirational. Some of the things you've been doing, and now we've become kind of friends in work, and you know, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you, babes.
Dr. Rock. In many ways, a doctor of all sorts of things, but particularly neuroscience, well-being. We've worked together for a long time. It's just fantastic to have you here, and also for introducing us to the lovely Richard and his London City Voices, because we really wanted a choir, and stay around at the very end. We're not going to let you leave without doing a bit of singing. So hold on for that. And of course, my business partner, Helen Gorman, who's going to share some of the things that we've experienced and learnt in the last couple of years about what's going to happen in the future. We'd love you to take part. So if you want to ask a question, it feels like the best way is just to raise your hand. You can use the app over there if you want to, and you can click and ask some questions if you don't want to raise your hand. So thank you very much. Look, let's start with you, Tom. You know, let's talk a little bit about the benefits of putting in wellbeing and performance programs, focusing your team. We've talked about this all day, but from your perspective, you know, we've worked with you and your team, particularly Oracle, and for me, it felt like it really pushed them on to another level. We look very much at your team, not just from a wellbeing perspective, but from a performance. What couple of things did you learn about it?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me leap into the TUI chair last minute and represent SAP. And so how can I quickly answer your question in a couple of points? I think the DD example was the best example, which is, as a leadership group, no matter how open door policy you've got, you don't really know what your team is thinking. And you know exactly where I'm going with this. I'm an individual who will constantly talk about we must understand each other, we must run an open door policy. I'm one of you. When I first met my team, which was about 60 people, I stood in front of them on a stage like this, and I said, who's got a PhD? And we had a couple of PhDs in the room. Who's got an MSc? And there were a few others. Who's got their BA, BSc? Who's got A levels? And literally at the end, there were two people with their hands in the air, and I was one of them. And I said to them, look, I'm probably the least qualified as regards education, but one of the skills I've got is getting teams together and getting them working properly. So setting the scene, I had that expectation with my team. I got them all to read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. If you haven't read it, it's a great book. And then 18 months later, COVID struck. We've got our new annual planning. I've now got a team of about 120 people. I'd known Suki for a little while. And I said, great, yeah, can you come in and do the Let's Reset piece? And her and Helen had interviewed the leaders in my team, and we had that open session. And I thought, I'm ready for this. Yep, I know everything about the team. And I'll tell you a little story. I'll try and be quick, but I'll tell you a little story that you don't know. So when I was 10 years old, I was lucky enough to play rugby at Twickenham. And I was captaining the side, and we won the tournament. And in the drive on the way home, my father turned to me as I was sitting in the passenger seat with the cup, and he said, you did very well, but you didn't score a try, did you? And yes, you can exactly imagine how I felt. And that level of insecurity stayed with me for a very long time. And it really meant that I was one of these people who would work as hard as I could for my team. And I was doing that, working as hard as I could. So I was working till 2 o'clock in the morning, thinking I was doing the best I could for my team. And in that session, one of the more vocal individuals said, well, Tom, when we receive emails from you at 2 o'clock in the morning, we think we need to be working at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I had this incredible sense of feeling, both incredible joy that she'd had the confidence to tell me because of the facilitation that had happened, and this dread and horror of what I was trying to achieve was the exact opposite. And then we went through, a little bit like Dee Dee, we went through how could we change our behaviours, and I changed my behaviour very quickly to ensure not only that leadership team, but the subordinates underneath, everybody was bought into looking after each other. I think that's probably where you were heading, so I'll pause there.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I remember that incident so well, and it was a kind of quite an eye-opening moment, isn't it?
It was a tearful moment.
Yeah, it's tough. Michelle, I didn't mention you're an ex-Olympian athlete, so you are in many ways to people that want to keep fit. So one of the 7 needs is physical well-being. But so often we have people going, do you know, I can't even go to the gym, let alone be an Olympian. How do we encourage people to think after their physical well-being without perhaps going out running or going to the gym?
Well, I always say thank you, everybody, for having me here. It's really nice to be in person, by the way. I'm loving it, so thank you. And Suki, just to let you know that my agent would say, you can't say ex-Olympian. Once an Olympian, always an
Olympian. Always an Olympian. I have to say that. You're so
I just have to correct you there.
Which is why you have
she'd be saying, Michelle,
name. Yeah,
she said, you have to change that. So
okay.
Sometimes you have to be outspoken as well for things to happen and make changes. So Suki, I love you dearly, but I have to just...
No, okay, I'm never going to say that again now.
Sorry,
I get that. No,
sorry.
Thank you. I'm pleased you told me.
So going back to the question, I always say movement is life. And whenever I speak to anybody, I don't expect anybody to become an Olympian, even represent their county, even represent their country. But what I expect them to do is represent themselves. And representation of themselves will be just movement. And if that means that on a Sunday morning you put on the best Bob Marley album and you dance around your house, and you encourage everybody else around you to dance around their house, and that gets people moving, that's the best way forward. Because my oldest client was 92 years old, and he said to me, movement is life, Michelle. And I said, can I steal that mantra? And he's been past now 3 years. And I still say it today, movement is life. So it's about all of us having a responsibility for ourselves, taking account of our own selves, and having your colleague next to you saying, should we go out for a 15-minute walk? It's not about going and doing the HIIT session that's going to wear you out, getting lactic acid. It's none of that. It's about moving for yourself and for your health. The same with like how we are paying a lot of attention on our mental health. Physical health and mental health go hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love that. And we've got a bit of a sing-along later, but just remembering every time we listen to music, we just need to move.
Just move. Yeah, move your body, wind up your waist, do what you need to do, but movement is life.
Yeah, absolutely. What we wanted in this last session is to teach you a few things you might not have thought about. I've had cancer 7 times. And last year I reacted to some immunotherapy and I was really ill at the beginning of this year. And one of the things, actually talking to Julia in particular, that made a fundamental difference to my recovery was my gut health. So a few of you will sit there going, yep, I absolutely get it, I know what to do. But some of you might not. So I just wanted, Julia, you can talk about all of this stuff, but I'd just like you to tell us a little bit about gut health and why that can make a difference to us, but also make a difference to us when we work, because we get it and we're looking after ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, we are, everyone, brace yourselves, because we are entering the gut era and the gut revolution, because I started as a sport and exercise scientist working with British Olympic squads in the 90s. And in the fitness era, we thought that we were going to produce healthy nations, getting everyone to join gyms, because that's what the science had come out of elite sport, and that's what we thought we were meant to be doing. 50 years later, our stats are worse than ever, and the science clearly shows that it's down to gut bacteria, because we have created a life that kills most of the good bacteria, and we have a very low diversity of bacteria in our gut, and that is linked to inflammation. And we now know that that low-level inflammation lies silently for decades before it's diagnosed as a chronic illness. So all of us here, and I'm testing gut health scores with all my clients, and the people who are really fit have got the worst gut health scores, because fitness and wellness are not the same thing. And so that's the new message now that's coming out loud and clear, is that we need to understand gut health, which is quite simple. We need to be eating a lot of food with live bacteria in it. So lots of kombucha drinks, kefirs, live yogurt, stuff that has got live bacteria in it. And we need to be eating more vegetables, more fibrous food, because that's what the bacteria eat. And their poop are the chemicals that we then use for our brain, our body, our immunity, our metabolism. That's our ancient biology has evolved using the metabolites that the bacteria poop out. And this is all, you know, literally in the last decade, the technology now has been able to show in detail, not just what the bacteria are doing, but the DNA of the bacteria. You know, we can see so much more that we never, ever knew before. So now, as a sport and exercise scientist and a neuroscientist, I'm telling my clients to cancel their gym membership and fix their gut health and use that monthly membership on probiotic drinks, probiotic foods, chilling out, because stress has a big impact on it as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Julia. You're so right. So we've got movement is life. Wellness is not the same thing as fitness. Helen, the other area, we've talked about this a little bit throughout the whole day, that we see on the 7 Needs test consistently in workshop is mental health. You know, and the importance of that. What are a couple of things that people can do to really improve their mental health?
So I think if you look at what we've seen in organisations, particularly over the last couple of years, in the mental well-being seems to be really challenging for people. I haven't got the time, I'm too busy, there are too many things to do, and the nature of how we've all been working. I had to nip out to go on another panel this morning, and I shared this story of a study that EY conducted in the States 2 years ago now, so just at the beginning of the pandemic. And they had 2 cross-functional teams in EY, both working on really demanding big projects, really tight deadlines, sort of slight 24/7 mentality. And one team, they drove some wellbeing behaviours into that team and asked them to practice them. And they were really, really simple things. Every 2 hours, they had to take a break for 5 minutes, literally to breathe, to get some fresh air, to look out of the window. The other thing that they had to do was to take up something new outside of work. So they had a cut-off time for when this team finished work, and they had to go and discover something new that wasn't related to their job, and ideally wasn't related to anything else that they felt they had to do in their life. And the third thing that they asked them to do was do the most difficult task first in the day, the thing that either is most difficult for you or you're avoiding and putting to the bottom of your list. And at the end of those 6 months, they compared the 2 teams, and the productivity of the team that had taken those 5 minutes every 2 hours, etc., was 20% higher. The other really interesting statistic was that none of that team left. And so my provocation would be, there's not really an option not to lean into this. And the opportunity cost of not doing it is actually bigger than the opportunity gain of doing it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. Michelle, I want to come back to you to talk a little bit about women, actually. We've had lots of women here today. I always love it when we've got audiences where there are as equal or even more women than men, because it's so rare still in my business life. Michelle, we know that so many people have been impacted by COVID, but particularly working women. And there's a lot more conversation around menopause. Tell us a little bit about, you know, what can women do in particular to be more effective in the workplace?
Well, first of all, from being an ambassador for the menopause charity, I think it's just, you know, and seeing loads of programs that Davina's doing just to highlight and raise awareness of perimenopause and menopause. I think first of all, it's allowing women to feel more comfortable in whatever state they're in and transition they're in. And me, myself, knowing as a 50-year-old lady that's perimenopausal, I'm having the conversations at my workplace. So first of all, I'd say for everybody here that's of that age, anything past 45 is considered perimenopausal and will be having some form of symptoms. To speak to your HR, have the gumption, even if it's collectively, get together as a group of women and say, do you know what? Could we have a conversation with you to make sure, do you know what perimenopause and menopause is? Straight in the first place. Because a lot of people won't know what you're talking about. Yeah. And sometimes when people don't know what you're talking about, it immediately puts up a barrier and it can cause defensiveness. So we in ourselves have to take, and I use the word ownership, which I use a lot in my life. My kids are bored of it. We have to take ownership that it's our job to let people know how we're feeling.
Yep.
Yeah. And then it's your management's job. And you know, we have got a lot of males that are in senior positions who are very, very aware that they need to do more and are willing to do more. But it's our job to go with them and say, look, can we all explore these options?
Yeah.
Because the statistics show that you are getting rid of 10% of the workforce at least who are dropping out in their late 40s, early 50s because they feel inadequate because of the perimenopausal, menopausal symptoms. That cannot be right.
No, absolutely. And I think it's great that we've got a focus. We've got people like you, Michelle, being an ambassador for that. Julia, just to extend that even further to kind of everyone in the workplace, you know, I am so delighted at being face-to-face. I'm loving being back in the office. But as we've heard today, I also feel kind of panicked by the amount of stuff I've got to do, you know, and the way I need to look after myself, the way I need to perform, build my business. From a neuroscientist point of view, what's happening? What can we do to help people feel more secure?
Well, the brain gets very confused by our world in general. And when we were saying about that study of, you know, closing your eyes, take a breath.
Yeah.
When we're engaged, whether it's, especially when we're on a video meeting and you're looking at all these different faces, especially if you're on a big computer screen, big faces up close, that would never happen unless you were in a conflict situation where a big face is that close to you, or a mating situation. Now, you know, the brain doesn't understand anything other than the ancient way that we evolved. So you're in that high stress situation, beta brainwaves, and you can only operate at that level because of the waste products that are produced for a certain amount of time before you just cannot focus anymore. By closing your eyes, extending your exhales, listening to some music, just taking yourself away from that moment, your brainwaves slow down to alpha wave, and that resets to enable you to then go back into a session of beta brainwaves. And it's that being able to reset.
Yes, good word.
It's those hacks but this is, you know, I really strongly feel that there is a huge education gap because people don't understand, you know, we know more about how the iPhone works than our brain and our body. And that education gap is seriously dangerous because we really don't know how to do these simple things. You know, if you knew that, oh right, the brainwaves speed up and speed down, and I've just got to close my eyes and just do a slow, long exhale, and that resets the chemistry.
Yep. Yep.
If people understood that, then more people would be doing it. That's the thing. If you just say, oh, close your eyes, it all sounds a bit woolly, right? It's like, well, how on earth would that make a difference?
Yeah, I could see that. And but you're right, you need to slow down to speed up. Absolutely. Tom, I'm going to get us to kind of think a little bit more about the future. It's fantastic, isn't it, when you've got a moment you start a new job. So now you're Global Head of Customer Engagement, GTM SAP. Mm-hmm. Very grand title. Thank you. I know you, and I know what you will have done for the last few weeks before you started is to go, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to lead? How am I going to engage with my team? How am I going to think about the business, both from, you know, a kind of personal point of view, but also from a logistics point of view with your team? What sort of things do you know, or you're going to try that's going to work, you hope, to be able to bring this team forward?
So you didn't give me the perimenopausal question. It's a big topic in our house at the moment. And I think it's really important that it's brought up because it's just something that is not talked about enough. And if we can talk about it, then we can understand it and then we can deal with it. And the idea of losing these really smart people at a time when they're becoming the most productive and the best leaders is a real shame for most businesses. Okay.
And we need men to talk about it.
And we need men to talk about it.
You need everybody to talk about it. You need the younger people to recognise, actually, that's why my colleague may be acting a certain way. You need their children to understand it. Oh, that's why my mum's a bit more stressed. So it's definitely not a 45 to 55 problem. It's everybody's issue.
Yeah. Although my 12-year-old son will go, oh, Mum, stop talking about the men.
Of course. Tell him to go and get some tampons.
Yeah.
He'll be fine.
How do I think about things differently? So for the first time in a few years, I've joined a new business. I'm week 3 in. So, and I am a problem solver. So the first thing I'll want to do is look at the problems and then tell people how possibly we could solve them. So the number one thing is listening. What I've observed within SAP that's similar to Oracle is the same for large businesses. If you don't know Oracle, you don't know SAP, large technology companies with over 100,000 employees. The classic thing that I'm seeing is siloed groups across marketing, field marketing, sales development, product. And so probably one of the actions that I will take is to work out how to help them to understand each other better, so that you can have, a bit like Adrian Hallmark was saying, how can we have a cohesive team who really get each other? The second thing I've observed is I got an email at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, which was a real provocation for me. I was like, oh, well, what we need to do it, and I managed to stop.
Well done. That's new behaviour from you.
That's big for me.
I'm very impressed.
And so it's probably retraining other people to say that happy, confident workforce where their well-being is key will drive the productivity that you think activity is going to create.
Yeah, yep. Yes.
But doing that in a delicate way so you can bring both the leadership and the workforce along with you. So those are the things that I'll do differently. I quickly want to talk about something that came up earlier.
Yeah, I do.
Which is, and you've talked about what's the future of technology that might help well-being. So it's easier to do this now. Who doesn't have a mobile phone? Put your hand up. Okay. Who doesn't have a social media app on their phone? Put your hand up. Well done, you. Okay. So those products were created with the understanding of neuroscience and how the brain works, not to make us happier people, not to make us better in the workforce, but generally to sell advertising so that you would buy something. And they're really good at it. When you use technology and it doesn't work, so my father passed away a couple of months ago. As you know, he had cancer. I moved my father's broadband account to my mother's name, and my father watched all the sport. So I phoned them up and said, look, you know the bereavement things just happened. My mother wants to cancel the sports channels because she doesn't watch cricket and rugby. I spent an hour and a half on 3 different channels and still couldn't switch it off. They said, we're going to send a password by post to your mother. I said, don't do that. She'll say, I've put it somewhere safe.
Yeah.
So what I think is going to happen is that with this holistic view of both the workforce and customers, at least where I think it's going, and I hope it's going, and in SAP I can see it going that way, is those rewards that you get in social media, which trigger all those endorphins. Technology is going to start doing that, but for different behaviours. In other words, you'll get a reward for not looking at your phone for 20 minutes and closing your eyes.
God.
So I'm hoping that we do that. I think we're going to do that possibly from an employee perspective before we do it from a customer perspective, but I think that's where it's going.
Yeah, I've got this fascinating. And it makes so much sense now with everything that we know. But, that's such a different perspective from business, isn't it? So it'd be fascinating to see how you get on with that.
Well, just to finish that point, so arriving at SAP, and there's a day of purpose. SAP's purpose is to build intelligent, sustainable enterprises. Now, to a lot of people, that's a poster. Hey! What if all of your technology had all those green KPIs built in? So if you've got, retail was a big piece today, you've got in there, what is your returns rate? What's your carbon footprint? What's the value of your supply chain? What's the efficacy of your supply chain? That's what SAP do.
Yeah.
So I've arrived going, wow, this is really cool. I just think it'll get to the employee and then it'll get to the customer.
Yeah, no, excellent. Julia, I'd like to just carry that on because, you're I'm sitting here with my Google Watch, which measures everything for me now. Tech in the future, how's that going to really help us get the well-being performance piece right in the workplace and for ourselves?
Well, Suki, funny you should say that, because I have got some gadgets with me here. So, there's the ring, for starters.
Yeah,
so
we love that.
The Oura Ring tells me my body temperature.
Tell people what that does, yeah.
So it's got sensors inside it. It's telling me my body temperature, my stress levels, my sleep quality, my breathing rate, my activity rate, my monthly cycles. It knows my body better than I do, especially perimenopausal. Dates are all over the place. It's like a Russian roulette of monthly cycle dates. So then you've got the blue light blocker glasses. Not that you should be using your screens late at night, but the brain does think blue light is morning light, which disrupts our sleep. So blue light blocker glasses in the evening and using dimmer switches help stop that confusion from happening. And then when it comes to gut health, you've got things like the Lumen, which I'm having amazing, really fascinating results with clients right at the moment around fasting. So fasting is the best thing you can do if you're trying to achieve anti-aging and reduce inflammation and weight loss, but not necessarily just that. This machine, if you blow into it, will tell you whether you're burning carbohydrates or fat, which is a really useful tool when you're trying to get into fasting and trying to extend the overnight fast, so delaying your breakfast. So you're entering not just a fat burning state, but also autophagy, so that your cells are getting rid of broken proteins and repairing. Just a simple blow in. If you blow and you're still burning carbohydrates, then you need to delay your breakfast even further until this tells you that you're now burning fats. So there's just so much. These smart wellness devices now are, really flooding out onto the market, and the technology and the science behind them is advancing rapidly.
I love that one.
And it's affordable, right? I mean, it's a couple of £100. It's not.
It's a couple of £100 now, but it's going to be and get cheaper and cheaper as
Yeah,
you
exactly.
use them more.
But if you think,
think,
we used to have to do that in a lab because you would need to be able to. We've got an artificial intelligence bike that we use that can give the equivalent of a 45-minute run in a 5-minute, two 20-second bursts of cycling using artificial intelligence. So you can have it in the office. You don't need a shower or anything because you don't get. It's so efficient and fast. You don't get hot. Don't sweat.
God, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. Helen, I'm going to come on and talk a bit more about the measurement in the future. We've seen some wonderful tech. What's going to happen about measurement in the future in the workplace?
So I think that's the big debate at the moment, isn't it, around wellbeing? Everyone's talking about it, but how do you measure it? And if you're in an organisation where budgets are always challenged and you're the CFO, how do you look at assigning budget to wellbeing unless you really understand what the return on your investment is? And I think there are a couple of things to think about. I was talking a couple of weeks ago to a senior HR leader, and she was saying, the cost of everyone that we're losing through burnout or frustration or whatever reason is 1.5 times their salary. 1.5 times their salary. So it doesn't take much to work out if you're losing quite a few people in the year. That's a really high cost. We know there was a brilliant survey undertaken by the Energy Project a couple of years ago in association with the Harvard Business Review and Edinburgh and Warwick University. And they surveyed 20,000 people globally saying, what do you want from your employer to feel great about being where you work? And there were 4 things that people wanted. And they wanted their employee to genuinely support, enable, or help them with their physical well-being, their emotional well-being, their mental well-being, and their sense of purpose. And so finding a way that isn't just the yearly employee engagement survey, because that takes too long, finding a way to measure how employees are feeling about this and how good you are as an employer about delivering for your people is going to be really important. And the final 2 things I'd say on that is, we started the day talking about the 7 needs of wellbeing and performance. I think we're the only wellbeing company at the moment putting a measurement on these things that you can go, that's when we started, let's come back and do it 6 months later and see where people are at, let's do it a year later. But the final thing on measurement is if we look at the generation behind us that are coming into the workplace. My children are finishing off their secondary education or just starting university. They are now growing up in an environment in their education where well-being is really well supported. And so they're looking at their first employer to definitely be delivering against this. And so I don't think we've got a choice but to keep pushing the boundary, to keep finding a really simple way of measuring, and to look at the cost of why we're losing people and what we can do to redeem that cost.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. But I think that stat about, you know, the impact it's having on a business by not looking at this is extraordinary when it's so hard to get people to spend money on it. Michelle, I know you've got some really strong points about this. What's happening in the future?
I think exactly what Helen said there. It's more and more companies are knowing that actually in order to get the best out of their staff, we're not just going to do the tick box and have these team building days every now and again. You're going to start making it habitual and put it into the diary. And I think, again, my favourite word again, ownership, accountability. It is down to HR to make sure that if you want productivity and sustainability, you have to look after your staff on a daily basis. Yeah. And it doesn't mean, you know, bending over backwards and, you know, them taking all the hours and not being productive, but actually checking in, having that wellbeing coach like myself to say, okay, tell me about your staff. Where are they at right now? What are they going through right now?
Yeah.
Paying attention to your people. Yeah, people. Love your people. Your people are making your business work for you. Yeah. Not just slogging them, and definitely not answering emails. My husband's got a habit of sending out, my husband works in a boarding school. He's got a habit of sending his team emails at 12 o'clock at night. And he said, oh, because otherwise I'll forget. I said, that's your problem. Stop putting that on them.
Yeah. You taught me I'm okay now.
Yeah, no.
Exactly. No, Tom, I love that. And you know, and again, I'll reinforce it when I come home. And my husband always says when I come away from anywhere I'm working, he says, "Oh God, here we go again." And I'm like, no, but Matt, honestly, you've got to have a cut-off point. Yeah. And equally for ourselves, do you know what? After 7 o'clock, 7:30, I'm going to switch off. That's taking care of yourself and actually making sure that the next day you're coming to work pumped, recharged and ready for action.
Yeah, and you're so right. And, you know, it is about setting boundaries. And
boundaries,
actually,
parameters.
You know, what was so interesting with you, Tom, is your team love working with you. I mean, you are one of the leaders we've worked with, you know, over a period of time where they literally, they will work at 2 o'clock in the morning for you because they think that that's what they need to do because they love you. It's not because they're going, oh, he's a bloody awful boss and he's telling us to do something. They want to prove how amazing they are and they want you to look amazing. And I think that was the moment for me. It wasn't because they hated you at all. And that's, you know, so that's extraordinary. Helen, you can read the questions down there and I can't. Would you like to read out a question that you'd like people to answer?
Yeah, there's a brilliant one here that I love around, will there be a backlash against the impact of all the information and technology we have around health? For example, you wake up and you actually feel really great, but your device says you haven't had enough sleep. I think it's a brilliant question.
Oh, that's a great one. Well, look, let's start with Dr. Julia on that one first.
I often get this. These devices give you valuable information, not inflammation. I'm obsessed with inflammation, as we all should be. But information, right? Because you might wake up feeling refreshed, but a lot of other things happen during sleep. And these devices tell you how much deep sleep you've had, how much REM sleep you've had. Different processes happen in the brain during those sleep cycles and that you're going through those sleep cycles. So just because you wake up and you're feeling refreshed, looking at that data then makes you think, okay, so what did I do last night that screwed up my sleep cycles? Yeah. Because something that I did last night, whether it was blue light in the eyes or I had dinner too late, and so I activated that metabolic process too close to bedtime, something that I did in my daily habits disrupted that. So it's all about information. Yeah. That's why it's so valuable. And the other question here is about this device, asking what it's called. It's called the Lumen, Lumen.
You know, just following on from that, Julia, I think, you know, I often wake up, even if my watch tells me I've had loads of sleep and I'm fine, I'm like, do you know what, I don't want to get out of bed. I definitely don't want to exercise. And, you know, I'll be working and I think I don't really want to get up for 5 minutes and have a break. And I kind of need those emotional cues in order to remind myself. So I now, you know, having listened to one of the psychologists, I put them on my phone. I even record myself, I'm so sad, going, you will feel better. Don't you remember how you feel when you do this? To make myself do it. Yeah. And, you know, and I wonder, Michelle, you as an Olympian, God, you are the person who can overcome that feeling of going, do you know, I just feel shit today, or it's freezing cold and I'm out running again. You know, how do you get over that, and how do you help people do that?
Well, I think, first of all, it's kind of a little bit easier for me because I've always been intrinsically motivated, because I'm not being funny, guys. I hated training in the rain. And, you know, I used to always think to myself, well, my Russian compatriots are out in the rain, they're out in snow, they've got very limited food compared to me. So they're going to be kicking ass on a Boxing Day, so I've got to do it too. So that was my driver. What I say to people now is really, why would you not? And, you know, I was talking to my taxi driver on the way here today, and he said to me, oh, you know, I'm in quite a sedentary job. And I said, if you're not doing it for you, who are you doing it for? Yeah. So, and he said, oh my God, I love that. And I said, just a quick, simple thing I said to him, on your birthday, and I said, when's your birthday? He said, oh, January. I said, right, so next January, book into the doctors to go and get a full health check. He said, oh, but I'm not at the age for prostate yet. I said, no. Don't worry about that. I know you're just 49. I said, you might be. Don't belittle it. I said, but do your health check. Schedule it in. If it's not in the diary, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like your 5 minutes that you turn and say, Renaud, get up and move. So I would always say to people, who are you doing it for? It's not just for yourself, surely.
Yeah.
Even if it's not just for you. So for me, my driver is my 3 children. I want to be around for my kids, so I'm going to be looking into my gut health tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all going to be there.
That's what I want.
That's the key thing.
Make a
Like,
difference.
we forget that our mood, those chemicals like dopamine and serotonin, the gut bacteria, we now know as driving the baseline levels of that. So as you were saying earlier, right, Helen, it's like you can't detach, oh yes, mental health is over here and physical health is over here.
No.
The gut-brain axis is a real thing.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, it all comes back to this fact that we've got low diversity of gut bacteria, which we can really easily fix by just
absolutely
changes to diet.
Absolutely. Helen, do you have a question that Tom can answer? I can see some more coming up here.
Look, seeing if there's something relevant for Tom.
Is there anything for you, Tom?
Yeah.
The top left.
Oh, Julie.
Human capital.
Now reading all the questions.
Yeah. So what is the most successful strategy you've witnessed to raise human capital as a KPI?
Oh.
Tom.
I think I'd like to understand the question. The person who wrote the question, yes. Hi. How are you? Yeah.
Can we just get you
We
on
know each
microphone?
other.
Do we have a microphone left anymore? Can I just wait for you just 1 second, just so that, because it's being filmed, we can then we can hear you. I know you can shout, but that would be really helpful. And it gives Tom a bit of time to think about human capital.
Should have known it was from Claudia. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Could we put the microphone on, please? Try again, Claudia. Okay, Claudia, just shout. I'll repeat it.
Project. First of all, I didn't know it was going to come to you, so yes, that's my. I was interested in a point that Helen raised earlier, talking about the metrics of human capital. And you talked about sustainability. When you talk about sustainability on a board, it tends to, human capital is a part of it. I wonder, in those boards that are less progressive, maybe less of kind of leading organizations, what are the good strategies to raise human capital as a quantifiable
Yeah.
KPI?
Okay, thanks, Claudia. That's really helpful. So what can we do, for those who couldn't hear, what can people like you as leaders do to persuade the board to focus on their people?
Yeah. So
And then we'll have Helen's perspective as well. And then if there's one more question, we'll get that for the other team. Thanks.
So there are a few KPIs that have come up today that I think are useful. The obvious one is retention, right, which is an instant cost of replacing people. But if you watch the DD session, collaboration was a score. And what did I just say about 100,000 people businesses? The biggest challenge is the departments understanding each other. What you tend to have is sales chucking stones at marketing and marketing chucking stones at sales. So that collaboration score will be 1. And then I suspect there will be another that will come, which is how do the other departments rate you?
Yeah.
And that will be clearly connected to the collaboration score. So I've often said, having worked in customer experience for a long time, let's say I'm talking to the CMO, or let's say I'm talking to the marketing director, and I say, what is the head of customer services #1 objective? And if you don't know that, and there's a problem in you as a cohesive group going to the board and saying, this is the next thing we must do for the customer. So I think that collaboration and respect across departments will actually become key, as well as the obvious sort of retention scores.
Thank you. Helen, maybe you can just add to that as well.
I think for me, it's looking yourself in the mirror as an organisation and saying, what are the objectives we're not achieving and why? And really understanding why are our people not achieving them? Because I think if you understand that, it gives you some data to say this is why the human capital bit's really important.
Are there any other questions? Is there another question that's a sort of Julia Michelle one, or will I've got one more quick question to ask them. I can't see it. It's not on my monitor, so I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong side.
That's that one.
Yep.
No, ask
Okay.
yours, Suki. I think we've covered.
Okay, so look, we're almost out of time. Michelle, let's start with you. If there's, I know movement is life is so important. If there's one tip that you could leave everyone with today, what would it be to really think about their well-being, to improve their performance in the workplace?
I think the one tip would be, you are your own bestseller. You have to look after you, and a company will function with or without you. That is the bottom line. And my mother taught me that. She's 82 years old. And she said, a company will function with or without you. So look after your mental health and physical health and your gut health.
Yeah.
And that would be probably my closing thing. Nobody's indispensable. So look after you.
I'd love to meet your mother. She sounds like a
Do you
very
know what? My
wise
mummy,
woman.
I'm going to tell you guys now, she is my hero, my champion. She's my why, because she came off the plane at 20 years old from Jamaica. And there's no way that she would expect her daughter to not be a success. And success is in my own right.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Julia, what one thing? We've done the gut health thing, but what is the one thing?
My one tip would be to read my book, of course, because it's
Well,
it's got all the tips in it.
Lots of books.
Give me one book.
Yeah. So, Neuron, Smart Wellness Made Easy,
the music diet.
and the music diet, because music is like
Yeah.
my amazing biohack. But honestly, my one tip would be 3 tips: fasting, do a gut health test, probiotics, but also learn about all this stuff so you understand how your body works.
Helen, very quickly, one tip.
3 words, how are you? For any of you who were in the session earlier, if you ask one person every day in your organisation, how are you? And really stop and listen to how they are, it will change your culture.
Tom?
I was once told this story by an exec trainer. There's 5 of us on the board, and we were in a lift going down, and a junior exec assistant came into the lift. And this was a thought experiment. He said, how did they feel? We were like, well, they're fine. They're going down to the exit. He said, their level of anxiousness and nervousness is this high. And you can look at this up to people who are higher than you in organisations, and especially down, which is the first 3 minutes of your conversation on any meeting is about them as human beings. It's not about work, so that you set the level playing field.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Look, thank you. It's been a brilliant day. Stay, don't move anywhere. I want to say thank you to the panel. I mean, I think what we've got here, if we sum it up, is can you imagine a workplace that every day you feel energised? And that not only do you feel energized, you want to energize those people around you. And I think by focusing on this, by measuring it, by looking after ourselves, by being brilliant leaders, we can make a difference to the workplace. We can reset how we think about well-being linking to performance in the future. So I really appreciate the brilliant panel this afternoon. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Dr. Julia. Thank you, Helen.